Hello students, welcome to Time Classes. This is an online video session for specifically for the SSC CGLE aspirants, and the topic we're going to be talking about today is, as you can see out here, it would be ParaJumbles. So ParaJumbles practice exercise 1, which means later there would also be a practice exercise 2 that we would be recording and sharing with you in some time. So this is specifically for SSC and CGLE aspirants, the aspirants who are taking the SSC CGLE exam. So just a couple of points before we start. The questions used in this presentation are actual questions which have appeared in the recent SSC CGLE exams. All right. So these are questions that have actually come in the recent SSC CGLE exams that we would be discussing with you. And the copyright of these questions belongs to the body conducting the SSC CGLE exams. So these are actual questions that have come in the exam, and the copyright for them belongs to the body that conducts the exam. All right. So the directions for these questions would be, the questions below consist of a set of labeled sentences. So out of the 4 options given, select the most logical order of the sentences to form a coherent paragraph. What do we mean by the word coherent in English? I basically mean logical. So guys, before I start, just a few words on ParaJumbles basically. So in ParaJumbles is a very common question type that's seen in most of these aptitude tests, whether they are the government jobs ones like bank PO, SSC, CGLE, insurance exams, or even the management related aptitude tests. So it's a question type that's seen almost in every exam that's conducted. So you have a paragraph that would be having like 4 sentences. It would be out of order, so the lines would be completely jumbled up. You have to read them, put them in logical order, and see which option would be the correct answer. So in SSC CGLE, the format generally has been that I have 4 lines P, Q, R, and S. They would be out of order. Then I have options like RS, PQ, RQ, PS. So in that combination, I would have 4 options that would be given to me. I have to see which option would be the most logical order. So just a couple of points of how to tackle these questions before we start. You can always go through them via the options also. The options help you to eliminate the thing quickly. The best way to go about them is to first read the 4 lines, try to understand what's the overall idea. So once you do that, identifying the first line gets really easy. So then we can see which option has that first line. So if you're lucky and only one option has it, you straight get the answer. But if more than one option has it, at least, let's say for example, option A and option C have the correct first line as per you. So at least options B and option D can be eliminated. Then from A and C, based on the further order, I can eliminate and get my answer. So that's how these questions are normally seen in the SSC CGLE exam. So let's try a couple of questions right now. So how I'll go about it is I'll display the question and the options. I'll give you like 15 seconds because we wouldn't be able to give you more time than that right now. What you could do is you could pause the video if you want to take some more time. So you could pause the video at that particular question, try solving it, and then play to see whether your answer is right or wrong. All right, guys, so let's start off. So question number 1, these are the 4 lines that have been given to me. These are the 4 possible options. I'll give you like 15 seconds. Like we said, you can read through it, or you could even pause the video, take your time, try putting them in order, and then we start discussing. So I'll give you 15 seconds. So like I said, you could pause the video, try it on your own, and then we can discuss. Even that's okay. All right. It had been umpteen years since we had seen each other. What does the word umpteen mean? A large number. So it's been a large number of years, or it's been a very like, big, large number of years since we have we had seen each other. Okay, so there are possibly two people who have not seen each other, the author and someone else. They are talking about themselves. One dull, dark day in autumn, I was traveling on horseback through a dreary stretch of countryside. What does dreary mean? Extremely difficult to manage. So possibly, if it was mountainous, it was extremely like there were a lot of rocks. It was a very difficult slope to ride on, something like that. This was the house of Roderick Usher, who had been my childhood pal. At nightfall, I came in the sight of the house of Usher. Okay. So if I read these four lines, it talks about possibly the author was riding through a particular place. He saw a house that had belonged to a very old friend of his. Been a long time since they had seen each other. So if I read these four lines, it's very clear to me that line number Q has to be my first line because it introduces the idea that on this particular day, the author was traveling. So in the options, I have option number 3 that starts with Q. I have option number 4 that starts with Q. So option 1 and option 2 get eliminated for me. All right. These two are very clearly wrong. I'm left with 3 and with 4. All right. So now this. Now pronouns always help us because a pronoun always comes after the noun that it refers to. So which line defines that house? This particular line. So at nightfall, this would be night actually. By mistake, they have written right. I think it should be night. So at nightfall, I came in the sight of the house of Usher. This was the house of Roderick Usher. Okay. Now, this might, a couple of you might feel out here that if a surname and a full name is given, then ideally the full name should come first and then the surname. But we can say, like in ancient England, they used to say the house of the Pendragons or the house of the Prince of Wales. So here this is a surname, not just for this particular person, but for the whole family. So, and like I said, line number R starts with a this. So before that, the actual house needs to come into picture. So it's very clear that line number S and line number R, I'm so sorry, yeah. Line number S and line number R have to come together, all right? So if I see option number 4 has RS, whereas option number 3 has SR. So 4 gets eliminated and 3 remains my answer. And if I see P, it had been umpteen years since we had seen each other. So who's this we, the author and this particular person? Therefore, my order has to be very clearly QSRP. Let's just read it once. Before you mark, after you mark your answer, just read the order once to see if it sounds correct. So one dull dark day in autumn, I was traveling on horseback through a dreary stretch of countryside. At nightfall, I came in sight of the house of Usher. This was the house of Roderick Usher, who had been my childhood pal. It had been umpteen years since we had last seen each other. So QSRP, option number 3 became my answer. Now this is clear how we work this out, guys. Okay. Now let's try the second question. Again, I'll give you 15 seconds. You can pause the video, try it, and then we'll discuss. All right. According to various estimates, between 1942 and 1944, there were approximately 400 victims of this practice. So I think a practice needs to be defined first. Daily in Warsaw alone, with numbers on some days reaching several thousands. There is a practice that was followed in this place daily between these years, and the numbers were reaching several thousands. Okay. So it's now very clear to me that I cannot start with line number P because the practice needs to be defined first. A common German practice in occupied Poland was to round up random civilians in the streets of Polish cities. Polish cities are basically cities within Poland. So this basically defines my practice, the practice that I spoke about in line number P. So the common German practice was to round up random civilians on the streets. So I think we're talking about the period when the Nazis under Hitler occupied Poland, and they were basically rounding up or gathering random civilians on the street. For example, now line number R. For example, on 19 September 1942, close to 3,000 men and women were transported by train to Germany. They had been caught in the massive roundups all over Warsaw the previous 2 days. So they're given you a particular day where around 3,000 men and women were transported by train to Germany. So they've been caught up in the massive roundups. Okay. So can I say to a certain extent, P and R will come together? Because P says that between 42 and 44, there were 400 victims of this practice daily, and R gives you an example on that particular day. All right. The term Lapanka carried a sardonic connotation. Sardonic means sarcastic. So sarcastic, extremely ironic. Connotation is application. From the word's earlier usage for the children's game known in English as tag. So there was an English game called tag. So the word Lapanka, which probably was used for this practice, it was derived from this particular thing, is what they are trying to tell us. So if I see this whole thing talks about a practice that was followed by Germany in Poland. So they were randomly gathering people, sending them by train to Germany. And there were 400 victims of this on a daily basis between these 2 years. And an example of that has been given. So no matter whatever I do, I think my first line has to be line number Q, because it defines this particular practice. So option 1 gets eliminated, option 2 gets eliminated. And also what's clear is P and R are coming together. So if I say option 3 says QSPR, option 4 says QPRS. So what I need to now figure out is the position of S. So can S come after Q, or does S come after R? Now S basically names this, if you see, it names this practice and tells me that it's basically a application of the word tag. Now, would I name it after the example of the practice, or would I name it before the example of the practice? Logically, first of all, I name the practice and then I describe about it. And PR describe this practice in further detail. So S has to come before PR. Okay, guys, did you get this? Basically, if I take S after R, the problem is PR give an example of this practice and S names it. So will the name come before the example or after the example? Logically, it must come before the example. So I name something and then I give an example of it. So Q basically says it was a very common German practice. S gives a name for it. Then P and R further explain it by giving an example. So option 4 therefore gets eliminated. My answer is option number 3, QSPR. I hope this is clear, guys. How we worked it out? My answer would be option number 3, QSPR. Okay, I hope this is clear. Great. Now let's come to the third question. I'll give you 15 seconds. Just give it a try. Okay. In other countries which are populated by haves, frustration is among them also because they do haves. Now, what does have mean? The haves are basically people who are rich, people who are comfortable, and people who basically have all kinds of comfort. And the have-nots are people who are poor. So P tells me in other countries where there are more of rich people, there is frustration. Q says in some countries, frustration exists because these countries are populated by have-not. So in some countries, there is frustration because there are more of poor people. In some countries, there are frustration because there are more of rich people. Frustration is a global cancer. It has spared no country. So which is this it referring to? Frustration. So if I see now, this whole para talks about frustration that is present everywhere. It's there in every countries. In some countries, it is in a certain way. In some countries, it is in some other way. So no matter whatever I do, my first line has to be line number R because it defines frustration. So, okay, 1 has R, 2 does not have it, 3 does not have it, 4 does not have it. So I'm very lucky, straight, I got my answer. But still, like we discussed, just once read the order. Okay, so frustration is a global cancer. It has spared no country, fine, because it refers to frustration. In some countries, frustration exists because these are populated by have-nots. In other countries which are populated by haves, frustration is among them also because they do haves. So now ideally, other must always come after some. So first I say in some countries, then I say in other countries. So even QP order is correct. First Q comes and then P comes. So this order seems to be perfect. RSQP, option number 1 becomes my answer. So in the exam, if you find that only one option has that particular first line that you've identified, then your job gets really easy. But before you mark it as your answer, just read the order once to be sure. So my answer is option number 1, sorry, RSQP. All right, guys, I hope this is clear how we work this out, RSQP. All right, now let's try the fourth question. Okay, the real purpose underlying this maxim lies in its utility in the wordly sense. So a maxim is basically like a kind of theory or a kind of a law rule that is followed. The real purpose in this particular theory lies in its application in the wordly sense. So in the form of a word, it can be used in a certain way is what he's trying to tell us. He has within him a spirit is ever exhorting. Exhorting is encouraging. So encouraging him to cut down his needs and to be happy with what he has. So I'm talking about, I think, man in general over here. That's what this he means. So he says that man has a spirit that is always asking him to basically cut down his needs and be happy with whatever he has. So man is something much greater than an intelligent being using his intellect. Intellect is intelligence to make newer inventions from time to time. So line number R tells me that man is something more than just an intelligent man, uses his intelligence to make inventions. So can I say R and Q will come together? Yes, because Q has a he that is basically referring to man. It tells us to be up and doing, not to be passive in our attitude to life. Now, what is this it? This it could be this maxim or this theory that we are talking about. All right. So just like R and Q will always come together, similarly P and S will always come together. I hope you got it how we work this out, because the he in Q refers to the man in R, and the it in S refers to the maxim in P. So RQ comes together, PS comes together. The whole idea out here is that man is something much more than just someone who makes inventions. He's someone who has a spirit that is asking him always to be happy with what he has. So his theory has a particular practical application. It tells us to always do something and not to be lazy or passive. So can I say line number R has to be the first line? Yes, because R defines man and P has a this maxim. So it cannot come until the maxim has been defined, and the maxim is defined in line number Q. So R needs to be my first line. So 1 gets eliminated, 2 gets eliminated, 3 could be a possible answer, 4 gets eliminated. And what does 3 says? RQPS, exactly what we suggested out here. All right, so my answer is option number 3, RQPS. Of course, once you had decided that R would be the first line, there was no need to make further groups also. Could directly have seen that, okay, option number 3 is the only one that has R, and you could have marked it. But then, like we said, once you mark it this way, always read the order once to be doubly sure. All right, guys, I hope this is clear now. Okay, let's try the fifth one. Okay, but he did not know to find one at this hour. So I'm talking about somebody who did not know how to find something at that particular hour. Okay, it was his first visit to the city. He didn't know where to go. Okay, Mohanlal's train was late and it reached Kolkata a little after midnight. Okay, so there's a guy called Mohanlal. His train was late and he reached Kolkata a little while after midnight. He thought he would go to a Chaultry where he would not have to pay rent. So Chaultry is like a kind of place where people live just next to each other, and the houses are almost touching each other. So he wanted to go to a Chaultry, he would not have to pay rent. So very clearly line number R has to be my first line because it defines Mohanlal. Everywhere else I'm saying he or his. So 1 gets eliminated, 2 gets eliminated, 3 could be a possible answer, 4 could be a possible answer. Okay, so RQSP, RSQP. All right, these two. So in both the cases, P is the last line. So even that is fixed for me. I just need to check the position of S and Q now. So Mohanlal's train was late and it reached Kolkata a little after midnight. Now let's examine 3. It was his first visit to the city because R के बाद Q आ रहा है यहाँ पे. So it was his first visit to the city. He did not know where to go. He thought he would go to a Chaultry where he would not have to pay rent. He did not know how to find one. So what is this one? This one is basically the Chaultry. So he had come very late. He did not know where he wanted to go, where he could go. He wanted to find a Chaultry, but he did not know how to find one at that hour. So 3 seems logical. RQSP seems logical to me. If I say RSQP, Mohanlal's train was late. It reached Kolkata a little after midnight. He thought he would go to a Chaultry where he would not have to pay rent. It was his first visit to the city, but the city is also Kolkata, right? Which means R and Q ka bhi group hai mere paas. So ideally, I cannot take Q after S, because R and Q also come together. So option number 4 gets eliminated. My answer is option number 3. All right, guys, my answer is RQSP. So Mohanlal came late. He did not know where to go. He thought of going to a Chaudhary, but he did not know where to look for one. So RQSP. I hope this is clear, guys, how we are working this out. Now let's try the 6th question. I'll give you 15 seconds. Just give it a try. Okay. And slowly, I think this should be a reach. Yeah. Slowly reach the pinnacle of self-awareness, experiencing a unity with all life. Pinnacle is the peak of something. So you'll basically reach the highest level of self-awareness. You'll experience a unity with everyone. So everyone is the same. If you transport your energy positively, it naturally becomes compassion and love. Okay. Then once you experientially are a part of everything, then nobody needs to teach you morality. All right. Then you can do something to improve the situation, but without anger. So basically it talks about the fact that we have energy within us. If we change it in a positive way, it becomes compassion. We can reach the height of self-awareness. We feel one with everyone. There's no need to teach you a morality, and you can do something to improve the situation. So because this talks about a unity and you are a part of everything, so these two ideally can be connected together. So no matter whatever I do, P and R will come together. And the basic thing that these people are talking about out here is transforming the energy positively. So Q becomes the first line. So let's see which option has this. One gets eliminated, two can be a possible answer, three gets eliminated, and four gets eliminated. So could QPRS be a possible order? Yes. So if you transform your energy positively, it becomes compassion and love. Slowly you reach the pinnacle of self-awareness, experiencing a unity with all life. Once you're experientially a part of everything, then nobody needs to teach you morality. Then you can do something to improve the situation without anger. So QPRS becomes my answer. All right, guys, I hope this is clear. Okay, now let's try the seventh one. Okay, he raised his voice against idol worship. So worship of idols, this he has to be somebody. So very clearly, P cannot be my first line because I need to see who the person is. People are generally very open and accept social changes with a positive attitude. Swami Dayanand Saraswati is remembered with reverence and affection. Reverence is respect. Among the social reformers of the 19th century, India is a country which respects spiritualism much more than materialism. So I can say that this he has to be Swami Dayanand Saraswati. So no matter whatever I do, R and P will come together. And these people, now, who are these people? I think these people have to be the people of India. So line number S is telling me that India is a country that respects spiritualism a lot. So people of India are very open. They accept social changes with a positive attitude. So no matter whatever I do, S and Q will come together, and then R and P will come together. And because people are open and accept changes with a positive attitude, so Swami Dayanand Saraswati is remembered. So I think first S and Q aayega, and then I'll have R and P. So I say that India is a country that has a lot of spiritualism. People are open-minded, willing to accept changes. So Swami Dayanand Saraswati is one of the reformers who still remembered today, and he raised his voice against idol worship. So do I have an option like this? Yes, option number 4. So 1 gets eliminated, 3 gets eliminated. Of course, if you had identified S as the first line, 4 was the only one that had S in the starting. So my answer very clearly is option number 4. All right, guys, option number 4 is QRP. Now let's try the 8th one. For that, we need people who possess not only high skills but high values as well. So first, that thing needs to be defined the first. So 2 that starts with P is definitely eliminated. So the need of the R is not only skill-based education, but also value-inspired and value-based education. Okay. When we talk of investing in education, a question arises as to what kind of education needs to be given to the youngster. So when we talk about investing in education, we need to ask ourselves what kind of education should be given. Our aim is to evolve not only an affluent society, affluent means rich, but an egalitarian, just, humane, and compassionate society. Egalitarian means one that is equal. So we want to evolve not just a rich society, but also an equal society. So I think out here, line number R would be the first line because it talks about investing in education. And then you talk about what kind of education is needed, which is addressed in the remaining lines. So no matter whatever I do, R needs to be my first line. So 1 also gets eliminated. Both 3 and 4 have R as the first line. Okay. Now for that, now what is this that? I think the one that's been talked about in S. So our aim is to evolve a certain kind of society, and for that we need these kind of people. So no matter whatever I do, S and P will come together. Okay. And Q would come at the end. For that, we need people who possess not only high skills but high values. So the need of the R is not only skill-based education but also value-inspired education. So value is being connected with both in P and R. P and Q, sorry. So after P, I can have line number Q. So therefore, my right order would be RSPQ. Do I have that in the options? Yes, option number 4. So 3 gets eliminated. My answer is option number 4. Is it clear how we work this out, guys? So initially we said that we need a certain kind of education. We talk about investing. What should be the aim of that education? A certain kind of society. So for that we need a certain kind of people. So the need of the R is this particular thing. So RSPQ becomes my answer. I hope this is clear, everyone, how we work this out. Okay. Now let's try the ninth one. A bit tricky. Just give this a try. Okay. So granted political defection. Defection is leaving one country and going to the other. Is increasingly less an act of ideological defiance. Defiance is standing against somebody than one of pure opportunism. Opportunism is matlabi hona, taking the opportunity and doing something. He says that it's true that today political defection is less of going against a government, it's more of taking the opportunity. Yet for all its flaws, the current law recognizes and respects one fundamental principle, the right to dissent. Dissent is to fight against something. So for all the flaws, the law recognizes one principle, that is the right to fight. A blanket ban on defection will weaken rather than strengthen democracy in whose name it is being sought to be imposed. So the author is saying that if we try to ban defection in all the ways, we'll weaken and not strengthen democracy. Granted also that it's illogical to allow a third of the party to split, but not in a lesser number. So it's also illogical that if we allow a third of the party to split, it is illogical. So granted and granted also, which means P and S will come together. And can I say R will be my first line? Yes, because R defines the topic by talking about a blanket ban on defection. So 2 gets eliminated, 4 gets eliminated. My answer would be 1 between 1 and 3. So a blanket ban on democracy will weaken, the defection will weaken rather than strengthen democracy, in whose name it is being sought to imposed. So it will weaken rather than strengthen democracy. P and S tell us why is it so. The fact that it is now one of opportunism, it's illogical, but yet for all its flaws, it recognizes a central idea, the right to dissent. All right, so Q would come at the end. So R defines the basic idea, P and S further elaborate on it, then Q tells me why it is so important. So option number 3 gets eliminated, option number 1 becomes my answer. All right, RPSQ. So 1 defines the topic, then P and S talk about the flaws in it, and then yet for all its flaws, this is the advantage, the fundamental principle. All right, guys. So RPSQ becomes my answer. All right. Option number 1. Now let's try the 10th one. Okay. As difficult as it may be to recognize what is inside us that is making us respond with negativity, that is the part towards forgiveness. So while it's very difficult for us to identify what is it that makes us respond in a negative manner, that is how we can finally forgive ourselves. Okay. This will automatically change our relationship with the other person and you will feel much better. Okay. So something that you do will make you feel better. All right. We need to recognize our reaction to the other person as a mirror of something in ourselves. Okay. So when I react to someone else, I need to identify it as a mirror. It shows me as a certain person. Whatever the issues might be, once you have discovered them, you can work on forgiving yourselves. Okay. So I think I'll have to start with line number R that basically defines what is being spoken about. The fact that when we react to someone else, it also shows us the kind of person we ourselves are. So 1 gets eliminated, 2 gets eliminated. My answer would be 1 between 3 and 4. And in 3 and 4, both of them, PS is a group. So I don't need to worry about that. I need to figure out the position of Q now. Okay, so this will automatically change your relation with the other person and you will feel much better. So what is it, this? Is it R or is it this thing? Now, if you see, we need to recognize a reaction to the other person as a mirror of something in ourselves. This will automatically change your relation with the person and you will feel much better, as difficult as it may be. But dekho, P and S are elaborating on R and Q tells me what is the result of all this. So if I keep Q before PS, then PS become extra. Because once I've already described the effect, then why do I elaborate on the thing itself, right? But I need to first define the idea, explain it further, and then give us the final effect. So I think Q should come at the end after PS. So R comes at the start, that defines the idea. P and S elaborate on it, and Q concludes by giving me the reaction or the effect of it. So my answer would be option number 4. RPSQ, 3 gets eliminated. Okay guys, my answer is option number 4, RPSQ. I hope this is clear. Okay, now let's try the 11th question. The aim must be to ensure that a country does not experience either paucity is shortage, or a surfeit. Surfeit is excess of trained manpower in any specific segment of our economy. So the aim should be to ensure that we neither have a shortage nor do we have an excess of trained people. When we set out about the task of higher education, we should be absolutely clear in our perception of the goals of the education in the specific context of our nation's development. So when we decide to go for higher education, we need to be very clear that what is going to be the goal. Why are we doing this? No doubt, one of the aims of education would be to create the required range and nature of trained manpower assets to be needed by different sectors of national growth. So no doubt one of the aims of this is to get a certain range and nature of trained manpower that different sectors would need. The entire educational apparatus must be geared progressively to fulfill the requirements of different phases of our growth in every sector. So we need to make it in such a way that we are able to satisfy the requirements of different phases of our growth. So can I say my first line will be Q? Yes, because it's the one that tells me that when I set out on the goal of higher education, what should I do? Because all the others are simply extensions of that. So option 1 gets eliminated. 2 could be a possible answer. Option 3 gets eliminated and option 4 gets eliminated. So I think 2 will be my answer. QRSP. So I'll start with saying that when you go about the task of higher education, should be clear in our perception of goals. So no doubt one of the important aims would be to create the required range of people needed by different sectors. Okay. So we need to then fulfill the requirements in every sector, and there should not be a paucity or a excess. So option number 2. Okay. So in a long question like this, if only one option has my first line, it becomes very easy for me. I can directly mark it and go ahead without wasting a lot of time on thinking over this. So option number 2. All right, guys. Now let's try the 12th one. Bureaucratic cultures can smother means overpower or restrict those who want to respond to shifting conditions. So if I have a bureaucratic culture, it can restrict people who want to respond to shifting conditions. So arrogant managers can over-evaluate their current performance and a competitive position, listen poorly and learn slowly. So managers who are extremely arrogant, they could either think that they performed very well, they may not listen properly, they may learn very slowly, and the lack of leadership leaves no force inside these organizations to break out of the morass. Morass is like a kind of pit or a kind of stagnated, or like the growth is getting restricted. Inwardly focused employees can have difficulty seeing the very forces that presents threat and opportunities. Okay, so basically I'm talking about how bureaucratic cultures do not allow people to think. So can I say P and S will come together? Yes, because bureaucratic cultures smother those who want to respond, and the lack of leadership leaves no force inside these organizations. Now, what would be my first line? Can it be P? Ideally, no, because first I have to talk about those managers and the employees, and then I can give you an overall idea of how to go about it. So, which would be my first line? Ideally, it would be line number Q. So, arrogant managers can over-evaluate their current performance and competitive positions. Then inwardly focused employees can have difficulty seeing these forces. So then I say bureaucratic cultures will restrict and lack of leadership leaves no force. So QSPR becomes my answer. Okay, guys? I hope this is clear. So slightly difficult one, but the idea here was how managers and employees, due to a lack of understanding, can create problems, and because of that people are not able to respond to shifting conditions. So QSPR becomes my answer. Okay guys, I hope this is clear. Option number 4. All right, now let's try the 13th one. However, our environment also needs some help from all of us to get maintained as usual, to nourish our lives forever and to never ruin our lives. So environment needs some help from us to be able to maintain so that it can support us and not ruin us. Okay. It gives us all things which we need to live our life on this planet. It provides us with a better medium to grow and develop. An environment includes all the natural resources which surround us to help in number of ways. So I'm talking about how the environment around us helps us. So can my first line be S? Yes, because as you know, when I say a doctor, the doctor, first a doctor aata hai, then the doctor aata hai. So I'll have to start with S and then I can have our environment later. So which line starts with S, which option? Option number 3. The others have different first lines. So directly 1, 2 and 4 can be eliminated. My answer is option number 3. एक बार ये read कर लेते हैं. An environment includes all the natural resources which surround us to help us in number of ways. This it is environment. So it provides us with a better medium to grow and develop. It gives us all things that we need to live our lives on this planet. However, our environment also needs some help from us to get maintained. So very correct, SRQP. If you see, P introduces a different idea by saying what do we need to do to maintain our environment. So, and no other line talks about it. So very clearly P has to come at the end. Because if P were kept anywhere else, the next line after that should talk about what should we do to support our environment. And another lines are talking about it. So very correctly, my answer is option number 3, SRQP. Okay, guys. Now let's try the 14th one. Just give this a try. Okay, the starting point can be the experience of a minority within the society generally, or even the experience of a group of people within a progressive social movement which does not live up to its progressive agenda in every respect. Okay, so starting point can be how the minority or a small number of people within the society, um, or even a group of people within a movement which does not live up to the agenda of that movement. Okay. So within or after postmodernism, a grand unifying theory no longer seems possible. This does not exclude the possibility or the necessity of dialogue. Postmodernism is the kind of theory that we see today around us, where people look at things in a very cynical or doubtful way. So within or after this, a single theory no longer seems possible. The starting points of social criticism can be very different, and the different forms of socialism never have a monopoly on social criticism. So when we look at social criticism as a starting point, it can be very different. Nevertheless, most social critics still consider the critique of capitalism to be central. So if I look at my options, my first line is either P or either R. But the starting point can be the experience. So before that, I need something. The starting point of what? Which means option 1 and option 4 get eliminated. Option 2 or 3 are possible. So dono mein the first line is line number R. So R becomes my first line and S becomes my last line. मुझे सिर्फ अभी PQ या QP ये check करना है. So the starting point of social criticism can be very different. The starting point can be. So can I take these two together? Yes. The starting point can be very different and it can be the experience of a minority. So R के बाद मुझे P लेना पड़ेगा and after P I can take line number Q. So RPQS and not RQPS becomes my answer. All right, guys. Option number 2. So start basically the starting points can be very different. So they can be something like this. Now, no longer a grand unifying theory seems possible, but still some critics consider it to be central. So even this central and this grand unifying theory can be connected together. So while we say that a grand unifying theory is no longer possible, but some critics consider this to be a central idea. So QS का भी एक group हम create कर सकते हैं. So RPQS becomes my answer. All right, guys. Option number 2. Now let's try this. To those who have known comfort, discomfort is a real torture. Comfort is now one of the causes of its own spread. Okay. The more comfort is brought into the world, the more it is likely to be valued. It has now become a physical habit, a fashion, an ideal to be pursued for its own sake. So I'm talking about comfort, the fact that now that comfort is there, it has become a certain kind of habit, the way it's important. So if I see in all the cases, my first line is line number Q in all the options. And as you know, Q here anyway defines the topic. So comfort is now one of the causes of its own spread. Okay. To those who have known comfort, discomfort is a real torture. And the more comfort is brought into the world, the more it's likely to be valued. So can I say R and P can be grouped together? Yes. Because there's more comfort, the more it's likely to be valued. So the people who have known comfort, for them it is the discomfort is a torture. So ये value वाले point को elaborate कर रहा है. So R and P will come together. It has now become a physical habit. So can I say S is basically elaborating Q? So Q says comfort is a cause. S in a way defines comfort by saying that it's now become a physical habit. So Q ke baad I can have S and then I can have RP. All right. So option number 4 becomes my answer. The remaining get eliminated. So if I see one says it's a cause of its own spread, why? Because now it has become a physical habit. Hence Q and S ka group is becoming perfect. So QSRP becomes my order. Is this clear, guys? How we work this out? QSRP. All right. Now let's try the 16th one. So if I look at the options, my first option is either Q or it is S. In that frame of mind, we have little sense of identity, safety, or security. Okay, so in a certain frame of mind, I have a little sense of all of this. Courage is required to explore our secret life because we must first withdraw from the social mirror where we are fed positive and negative feedback continuously. She's telling me that we need courage to explore our secret life because we should not go into the social mirror where we get feedback. So uske bina I need to look into my own life. As we get used to the social feedback, it becomes a comfort zone. So can I say Q and S come together? Yes, because courage is needed in a certain manner because we need to avoid the social feedback. And as we get used to it, it also becomes a comfort zone. And we may opt to avoid self-examination and idle away in a vacuum of reverie and rationalization. Reverie is unconsciously thinking something. So now it's very clear that Q needs to be my first line because Q defines the idea of courage. So 3 and 4 get eliminated. My first line is one between 1 or 2. So now if I see out here, like we just saw, Q and S also need to come together. So 2 gets eliminated. My answer is option number 1, QSRP. So courage is needed to explore our secret life because we must withdraw from the social mirror where we are fed positive and negative feedback continuously. As we get used to this feedback, it becomes a comfort zone and we may opt to avoid self-examination in that frame of mind. So QSRP, option number 1. I hope this is clear, guys, how we worked it out. Option number 1. Now let's try the 17th one. He was a funny-looking man with a high, bald, dome-shaped head, a face very small in comparison, and a long, wavy beard. So he's talking about his description. He didn't work at his trade, a stone cutter, more than what was necessary to keep his wife and 3 boys alive. So he was basically a stone cutter, but he did not work more than what was necessary. His unusual features were a standing joke among his friends. He was a poor man and idler. So no matter whatever I do now, P and R will come together because P talks about him having some very weird features and then R says they were a joke. These features became a joke. And can I say Q and S will also come together? Yes, because as he did not work at his trade more than what was required, he was a poor man. So which would be my first line? Would it be Q or would it be R? Actually, it could be both of them. But then if I think about it, first would I talk about how he looks? Would I talk about his job? First you'll talk about how he looks and then I talk about his career. So therefore, I'll have to start with PR and then go for QS. My answer would have to be PR, QS. Is there any option like that? Yes, option number 1. So 2 gets eliminated, 3 and 4 also get eliminated. So my answer is option number 1. All right, guys. And now even if you're a bit confused कि हमें PR से शुरू करना है कि QS से शुरू करना है, none of option number 2 starts with Q but does not have an S. And as we just saw, Q and S need to come together because both talk about this job. So based on that also, I can eliminate the remaining options and choose option number 1, PRQS. Now let's try the 18th one. When all the creditworthy people were given loans to a logical limit, they ceased to be a part of the market. So when people who were worthy of getting credit were given to a certain limit, they were no longer a part of the market. Even this would have been understandable if it could work as an eye-opener. Owing to the materialistic culture elsewhere, it was possible to keep selling new products to the consumers despite having existing ones which served equally well. Okay, they were lured through advertising and marketing techniques, so dustbinization of the customer, and once they became customers, they were given loans. Okay, this is like a kind of story then. If I see, I think I'll have to start with line number R because it tells me that it was possible to keep selling new products to the customers despite having existing ones. So who's this they? These they become the consumers. So they were lured through advertising and these other techniques and they were given loans. And now can I say this loans can be connected to the loans in line number P? Yes. So people were given loans and once they were given loans, they were no longer a part of the market. So RS के बाद P आ गया and even this would have been understandable, could work as an eye opener. So RSPQ therefore becomes a possible order for me. Do I have an option like that? Yes, option number 2. Is this clear, guys, how we worked it out? So they were selling new products to consumers despite having existing ones. So this was like they were dumping them as dustbins. Once they were ready customers, they were given loans. And once they got loans to a certain logical limit, they were no longer a part of the market. So RSPQ. 19th one. And the victims are likely to be the poorest of the poor, as well as the very sources of water, rivers, wetlands, and aquifers. So the victims would be extremely poor people and the sources of these rivers. In India, water conflicts are likely to worsen before they begin to be resolved. Okay. Till then, they pose a significant threat to economic growth, security, health of the ecosystem. Water is radically altering and affecting political boundaries all over the world. Now we always start with the most general line. In this case, both Q and S seem to be a first line because R and P, R has a they and P has an and. So we definitely cannot start with them. Now between Q and S, which is more general, S, because Q specifically talks about India, S talks about the world. So I can start with line number S. Do I have an option like that? Yes, option number 1, and the others are eliminated. So I can straight take option number 1 as the answer. Once let's read it in this order and see. So water is radically altering, affecting political boundaries all over the world, between as well as within countries. In India, then I say in India, water conflicts are likely to worsen before they get resolved. The victims are likely to be the poorest of the poor. Till then, they pose a significant threat to economic growth. So SQPR. I hope this is clear, guys, how we worked this out, how SQPR became the answer. Okay. And lastly, question number 20. For one, every few entrepreneurs are willing to take on a new outsource unless it comes with a guarantee of a certain level of sales. So every few entrepreneurs, people who set up their own businesses, are willing to go for outsourcing, giving the job to someone else, unless there is a certain guarantee of sales. This invariably acts as an incentive for outsources to be lax. Lax is lazy in developing the business. Despite being the dominant partner in the relationship, the outsourcer doesn't have all the advantages. The trade refers to it as a minimum guarantee clause, which means that if an outsourcee is not able to reach an anticipated sales level, he'll be compensated for the balance amount. Okay. So I'll have to start with line number R. That defines the topic. That despite being the dominant partner, the outsourcer does not have all the advantages. How did I work this out? For one, so इसके पहले कुछ और आना है, this इसके पहले भी कुछ आना है, it इसके पहले भी कुछ आना है. So option 1 gets eliminated because it starts with P, 2 gets eliminated, 3 gets eliminated, and 4 becomes my answer. RPSQ. So let's just read it once that way. Despite being the dominant partner in the relationship, the outsourcer doesn't always have the advantage. For one, every few entrepreneurs are willing to take on a new outsource unless it comes with a guarantee for a certain level of sales. The trade refers to it as a minimum guarantee clause, and this acts as an incentive for outsourcers to be lax or lazy. So RPSQ. All right, guys. Okay. So with this, I come to an end to this particular session. Thank you so much, guys. I hope you found this useful, the points that we discussed, and would also like to use it from your exams point of view. So like we said, as far as possible, because I know that your exams also have a certain time limit. So try solving these questions via the options. Read the lines, identify the first line, see which option has that first line. So if only one of them has it, you can directly mark that as your answer and just check it if the order is logical. If more than one option has that same first line, at least you'll be able to eliminate some options and bring down the number of options to those many. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Have a good day ahead of you. Thank you so much, guys.